behavior. Learning objectives list ways in which cats communicate with each other, with humans, discuss normal feline behaviors, list common feline behavioral problems, and discuss prevention and solutions. Before we get started, I have a very important video for you guys to watch on typical cat behavior. This is probably my favorite ever, and now you get to share in this joy. Gets me every time. So I linked to that on my YouTube channel if you want to look at that video, but it is hilarious and it is very typical of common cat behavior because cats are weird and wonderful. So feline communication, how do cats communicate with us? How are they able to tell us what they're thinking, what they're going to do, how we should read them? So body language is huge, facial expression is huge, and vocalization. All these things can help us identify how a cat's feeling, what we should do next, and how we should approach that cat, which is really important. How does this differ from communication with other cats? They still use body language, they use facial expressions, they use vocalization, rarely meowing, so we don't typically see the same meows that they give us being used with other cats. And then they also use scent, so they use pheromones. Now humans have been able to harness this a little bit, and we have synthetic pheromones that we sometimes use with cats who are stressed or angry or whatever it might be, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So cats use essentially the same methods for communicating with both us, or communicating with us and with other cats, and then they also use scent pheromones to communicate with other cats specifically. So body language, we often look at posture, so where they are in their space, their position, how they present themselves to us. We look at their tail, we look at their hair coat. Just going back, when we're talking about where they are in their space, I'm going to approach a cat very differently if it is hiding at the back of their kennel versus if it's sitting in the middle of their kennel, relaxed, looking around. And then lastly, if it's sitting at the very front of their kennel, growling at me. So those are three totally different cats. They're feeling completely different, and I have to treat them all very differently in my approach. So looking at this guy's got his hair standing up on edge. So that's piloerection, when they're able to send their hair straight up with tiny little cutaneous muscles. And that's our typical Halloween cat that was. So looking at these kitties here, we've got 4 different types of body posture, and they're all telling us something different about the animal. So we've got an animal who's fairly relaxed, inquisitive on the top left. We have a cat who's very alert and is in between, so unsure of how to react. He might be a little bit scared. His tail's tucked down toward his legs. The cat at the bottom left has likely been frightened or startled, and then the cat on the bottom right is very much in defense mode. Facial expression can also tell us a lot about the cats. And of course, there's a million memes for cats, so that's kind of nice. So when we're looking at a cat, we always want to look at the pupils. So are the pupils dilated or constricted? Their ears, are they perky, straight up, listening, interpreting their surroundings, or are they tilted backwards? Are they flat against their head? All of that's going to tell us a lot. Likewise with pupils, when a cat gets very scared, their pupils will get quite wide, and we have to be cautious of that. And then their mouth. Is their mouth tight? Is their mouth hissing at us? Is their mouth just closed but relaxed? And of course, I love this meme. So can you tell what your cat is thinking from their expression? Some cats keep pretty much the same expression and just have the tiniest, tiniest little changes to their body posture and their facial expression before they decide that they're not happy with you. And I've seen it before where somebody doesn't pick up on those very, very subtle nuances, those little changes in their behavior, those little tiny changes in their tail, and then they get bitten because they weren't giving the cat the attention that it needs in regard to changing our behavior to suit the cat's behavior. So looking at facial expressions, I like this chart here. So number 1, we've got happy for number 1, angry number 2, frightened number 3, playful number 4, and number 5 is content and relaxed. So looking at all of them, look at the frightened, so look at number 3, and note the pupils. So the pupils have dilated, their ears are flattened down against their head, and cats can be frightened and still strike out. So the angry cat, number 2, is one that's probably likely going to bite or to scratch, to lash out. But the frightened cat, number 3, it may do one of two things. It will either flip into fight mode, or it will stay in fright mode and essentially hide and freeze. And sometimes when cats do that, when they go into fright mode and they just freeze, that can be really beneficial for us, because then a lot of the time minimal restraint definitely works better. And then looking at their tail posture, the bottom, we've got playful tail, so happy tail. Anytime you go to pet your cat, most often as you're petting it, its tail flicks up in the air, happily, relaxed. Angry, we start to see a flick to the tail, or a quick sway of the tail. Back off is when they have piloerection, so that's when their little hair stands up on edge, or up on end, sorry. And then submissive tail often goes with the frightened, and that's when it's tucked between their legs, or it's flat to the ground or flat to their back legs. I love cat memes. So again, just looking at some facial expressions. So the cat on the top left is relaxed, its eyes are mostly closed, ears are facing forward, just slightly off to the side, but perked up forward. The one on the right has been disrupted or disturbed, or it's inquisitive, so it's trying to take in the scenario. And the one on the bottom right is in full defense mode, so we wouldn't just approach that cat, no problem. You know, I wouldn't walk up to that cat on the right and say, "Hi kitty, how are you?" and try to pet it. Not a good idea. And the cat on the left just kills me every time. So it's important for us to recognize the differences in those body postures and those behaviors before we go ahead and start interacting with a cat. So then we look at vocalization. So cats have a range of vocal methods for vocalizing to us and to other cats. So they have a meow, around 30 meow sounds. And my example of this was always my old cat Moose, who is my favorite cat in the whole wide world. He used to have a unique ability to change his meow based on what he needed. So whenever it was the middle of the night, and he would want something, so normally he'd want into the room so that he could be sleeping with me, or he'd want food because he loved food, which cat doesn't. So he would start saying hello in a meow. So it sounded very much like meow, meow, meow. And then when he didn't respond to him, he would change it. So he'd either pick it up to go a little bit higher, or he'd go really low until like a meow, meow, over and over and over again. So it was really, it was hilarious, but also extremely annoying in the middle of the night. So then they have this cute little teeny meow, and that's kittens to mothers. So you don't hear adult cats saying meow, 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 and not in the same way that kittens do. They have a hiss, which is a warning. Their tongue curls, you can see right there, so a little hiss. And then, of course, there's a growl. Growl is a low rumbling sound. I'll give you a word of warning. Keep your ears open for the growl. Sometimes we don't hear the growl outside the body. As an RVT, I'm often listening to their chest, and I've noticed that they're a nervous or scared cat. And then once I put the stethoscope up to their chest, I can hear, oh, okay, so he's growling. You know, that wasn't a purr, he's growling. So just be aware of it. Sometimes we don't hear the growl. And then, of course, there's the scream and the howl, and that's often a cat in pain. You'll hear the howl, it's really awful. Or sometimes feral cats who are just that aggressive or that scared. Most often it's when they're outwardly willing to fight, and you start to hear that scream and that howl, and it kind of sends shivers up your spine a little bit. But you just have to remember to stay calm and just work with them on their terms. And then cats also spit as a method for trying to scare you away, and that's when they are often lunging at you and spitting too. So then purring, we can go back. So purring, we'll talk about purring in a little bit. Purring is interesting. Cats purr most often when they're happy, right, as you'd recognize with your own cats. But they can also purr in high-stress situations, and they can also purr when they're, more so when they're very, very sick and when they're at end of life. So just very sick, very painful, end of life. Things like that can also cause a cat to purr. So communication, again, we'll move on with communication into the scent, so the pheromones. What are pheromones? Cats and other animals, of course, use them as aromatic markers. So they use them to mark their territory. They're marking their things. They're marking their belongings. And I always remember Robin Williams did a really good skit about cats marking, and essentially marking you, saying, mine, mine, you're mine. So how on earth do they create these pheromones, and do they mark with their pheromones? So cats have a number of scent glands throughout their body. So essentially rubbing their chucks, where they're either headbutting or rubbing around their zygomatic arch, the side of their face, and releasing these little pheromones onto their new property, so marking all of their property. They'll also rub their tail, or when you rub their tail, their lower back, they sort of release the scent, release the pheromones. And it's not anything that we can pick up, it's cat to cat. So it's specific to them, unfortunately, or maybe it's fortunately, that we can't specifically smell these. The other way they also do it is through urine marking. So especially male cats who have their testicles still, so intact male cats, they'll release a really, really, really stinky urine scent, and that is, they'll mark a vertical surface most often, and that has pheromones within it. So we definitely can smell male cat urine, but then again, we can't always identify the specific pheromones that they're releasing. Anal glands are another way that dogs and cats can do this. So they have two little sacs at about 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock within their anus, and those have little secretions within them. They're tiny little glands, they have little secretions within them, and every time an animal has a bowel movement, the anal secretions, so the anal gland secretions, are released with the bowel movement. And those are heavy-duty scent marking techniques as well. And if you've ever had anal glands on you, you definitely know that they're heavily scented. So looking at scent pheromones, having a look at the cat's skull here, the cat's head, so they have the olfactory lobe within their brain, they have the hypothalamus, olfactory mucosa within their nose, the nasal passageway, which is between their nose and their throat, and then the vomeronasal organ. So it's the vomeronasal organ that they use to pick up on a lot of these scents, these specific pheromone scents. So you might see your cat, I've seen my cat do it quite a bit when I come home from the clinic. If I have numerous cat scents or dog scents on me, or if the clinic cat's been rubbing all up on me, then my cat will come home and they start getting all funny. They'll come up and sniff me, and then if you notice here, this cat actually has its mouth open a little bit. So what they do, they start to look a little strange. They might breathe a little bit faster because they're just taking in smaller amounts of air to get that scent into the vomeronasal passage, or the organ specifically. So they open up their mouth, and essentially the scent hits their hard palate, more or less, and then it's rolled through that organ, and they're able to pick up on those pheromones. So it's really strange when you first see your cat with its little mouth open, but that's what they're doing. They're picking up those scents. Gravity is just a guideline. So let's look at some normal feline behaviors. So we've got purring, meowing, rubbing, kneading and suckling, and eating grass. So purring, most often, it's a happy cat. So most cats purr when they're happy, when they're happy and content. They can purr when they're fearful or anxious, and they definitely can purr when they're very, very sick or in pain. And that's when you don't want to hear them purr. It's really sad when you hear them purr when they're in severe pain. But it does happen. So just to be aware of it, if you ever see a cat that's purring, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're happy. Now this cat here, it's got a relaxed body posture. It's not hunched, its head's up. Its ears are, again, a little bit forward, just slightly off to the side. And it has that sort of smile on its face. So its eyes are just slightly closed. It's got a little bit of a lift to its lips. So it almost looks like it's smiling. That's a happy cat. So if you're hearing a cat purring, you just want to have a look at the rest of the cat and see how they're presenting. Are they looking angry? Are they hunched over? Are they listless? Are they looking dull? Are they looking lethargic? Why are they purring? Meowing is a way to communicate with people. Only kittens mew to other cats, so their mom. And some breeds definitely meow more than others. So if you ever get to know, oh, what is that kitty cat? I know definitely Siamese meow like crazy, and a lot of Rexes are very vocal as well. So a lot of those specific breeds, they talk a lot. Siamese are definitely known for just talking meow, 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 meow. And it can drive people crazy. So that's why, again, investigating the type of cat you'd like is very important, especially if you're going to get, a purebred or a mixed breed that has maybe one of those characteristics present. Becomes a problem when it's happening at night, and it often is at night because cats go through different phases of their day, and nighttime they can go through little bits of hyper phases when they wake up. It could indicate disease or loss of hearing as well. So if you have an older cat and they start randomly meowing in the middle of the night and they've never done that before, you have to consider some things like dementia. Cats do get dementia, so we think. And then also hearing loss. So in general, as they start to lose their hearing, they can't quite hear how, maybe disruptive their meows might be, especially in the middle of the night. Rubbing is generally a sign of affection, but it is also marking their territory, which is you. And as they're doing that, they're leaving their scent on you. It occurs more frequently if cats are in conflict. So in the wild, you definitely see this in big cats too. They mark more frequently when there's competition for resources. So they'll continuously, repeatedly just mark the same specific territory over and over. But also too, if there is tension in your household and if there are cats that have conflict in your household, then you might see more marking behavior. Kneading and sucking, or suckling, sorry. So the kneading portion, we call that happy paws. And again, quite often it's when they're content, when they're relaxed, and they just get into a good purr and they start kneading. And kneading is what they used to do to their mom when they were little teeny kittens to increase the milk flow. So they'd be latched onto the teat and they would knead and knead and knead the mammary tissue to increase milk flow. We see it now just generally as a happy cat kind of thing. You can see kneading sometimes as well when a cat's not doing so well, if they're very sick, if they're in a lot of pain. Sometimes they'll knead, especially if they're sick, more so than pain. But most often, again, your typical cat at home, it means they're happy. So this is a little kitten suckling, so you can see its little claws there. Poor mama cat. But the kittens just knead and knead and knead on the mammary tissue to get that milk to flow. So some cats, as well as just doing happy paws, they'll also suckle on skin or on clothing. So we have a cat at the clinic that I work at. Every so often he'll get his happy paws going and he'll start chewing and sucking on a blanket. It's very common to drool while they're doing this, so they get into like this incredible state of relaxation and they're just content as anything, and quite often they'll drool as they're doing that. Siamese cats are known for wool sucking, and it's when they take wool or soft material, so really soft material, they put it in their mouths and they just suckle on it nonstop. So it's a really common trait for these cats in particular. They don't know exactly why it's happening with these cats. It has to do, some people suggest that it has to do with they have a prolonged weaning period, but otherwise it's a weird characteristic, one of many for Siamese cats. Eating grass, we see a lot of cats doing this, and by grass we also mean houseplants. So it's totally normal. It can provide nutrients, often vomit, can cause a laxative effect. So then we always wonder, are cats doing this because they're feeling a bit nauseous and they want to get rid of what's in their system? Main thing that we need to know is to watch out for garden and house plants. Because some plants that we have in the house and some plants that we have outside are extremely toxic. And lilies in particular are so toxic. There are some types of lilies that are very common in gardens and in flower bouquets that if a cat comes into contact just with the pollen and they lick the pollen off their coat, it can send them into kidney disease and sometimes even kidney failure. So we really need to be aware of that. And we can plant catnip for cats, and then there's also one called cat grass that they're attracted to, and it's a grass that continuously grows in your house. So common behavioral problems, of course, we've got excessive scratching, so we want to train them where to scratch, and of course we want to teach clients or owners how to cut their nails as well. Inappropriate elimination is when cats will either defecate or urinate or both outside of the litter box. Spraying, so male cats are the ones who are most often spraying, and it's when they're urinating at high force on vertical surfaces, although female cats have been known to spray as well as a method for marking territory. Scratching we talked about last week a fair bit, so they might do some scratching around the house as a form of play, as a way to stretch, as a way to sharpen claws, and as a way to mark territory as well. They do destroy furniture, of course, and they can scratch people too. Now that being said, we all know what a cat's all about, so we should always consider this when we are adopting a cat to make sure that we have to be open to a small amount of scratching in the house. And with that, we always want to provide them opportunities. So we want to, teach our clients, teach our friends, teach our family how to trim the nails starting young so that they get used to it. It's an easy procedure for anybody to do. All you have to do is cut off the sharp edges of the nail, right? And avoid the pink quick, which is the blood supply. And then we also want to offer environmental enrichment. So scratching posts. I always rub catnip on my scratching post. You guys probably know I'm really weird with my cat. I was really proud to teach her how to use a scratching post when I caught her because she didn't seem to use it, and now she's super proud to use it. She's a hilariously strange cat. So I'll often rub catnip all over the scratching post and put it on different levels on the scratching post to encourage my cat to go to the scratching post, to use it, to scratch it. And then hanging toys too. So we always think that dogs are the ones that need exercise and environmental enrichment, get them outside, get them walked. But realistically, cats probably need, I would almost debate that they need more environmental enrichment than dogs do, because they're not just content to be with their owner. Cats definitely need some stimulation in their lives. If people are having issues with cats scratching, of course, you can prevent access to that room. You can cover the couch with tinfoil. They don't like tinfoil, but if it's a smart cat, they'll jump above the tinfoil. They can always get a little squirt with the water, just plain old water, never any chemicals or anything like that. And really, it's just a misting on them, and they don't like it. So then, of course, declawing. I don't generally consider this as an option for people who are worried about their couches getting scratched. If that's the case, perhaps the cat wasn't the best pet for the individual. So just, like our conversation last week, declawing is not a typical solution for somebody who doesn't want their cat to scratch. It's a full amputation of a piece of the toe. So again, looking at our fingers, if we curl our one finger, we've got 3 bones in our finger. It's exactly the same as the cat. And for us, it would be taking off the last bone in all of our fingers. And now what they're finding is studies are proving that cats have a lot more pain associated with old declaw surgeries than they originally thought. And long term, that can result in prolonged arthritis. They have to walk on their toes all the time. It's very challenging. And then also litter box aversion. So not wanting to use the litter box because the litter box causes them pain and they're associating the two together. So really not ideal. Most places in the world seemingly are phasing out declawing, which is great news in my opinion. And Canada is getting there too. It's just taking a little while. Declawing is illegal in many parts of the world, specifically in Europe and UK, which is essentially the same part. Australia, it's all illegal there. They do not perform those procedures. So looking at inappropriate elimination, this one's always challenging, and this is probably the #1 reason that people get rid of cats, unfortunately. So this is house soiling, so urinating and or defecating out of the litter box. So there's a lot of reasons that cats might start this behavior. The question is why? There's so many reasons why. So what we always recommend to clients is that we actually take the poop, take the urine out of the litter box every day. So we're actually getting rid of the gross material in the litter box every day. Don't skip a day. It's like leaving the toilet unflushed. You just wouldn't leave it there for days and days and days if it was your house. I hope you wouldn't leave it there. That being said too, always use ideally a nice clay, clumping, unscented litter. That is the most realistic to outdoor sand, unless you're actually getting sand for your cat, and that's acceptable too. Because cats get aversions to litter. If they don't like the litter that you put in their litter box, they have no problem having a poop outside the litter box. They may not like the litter box, or they may be physically unable to climb into the litter box. And I've noticed that definitely with my old cat. As she gets older, she's got more significant arthritis building up in her spine and in her legs. She has a really hard time getting in and out of the litter box. So I've reduced the height of many of the litter boxes, and I give her options as well. The general rule too for numbers of litter box is the number of cats plus 1. That's how many litter boxes you should have in your house. So right now I have 1 cat, so I have 2 litter boxes. When I have 2 cats, I have 3 litter boxes. Some cats just plain old don't like the location. If it's a busy area, if there's access to kids, if it's loud, cats are very specific. Also, they might not like it because it might be causing them pain. So think about that when you put your litter box deep dark into the basement. If you have an older, a senior geriatric cat and they have arthritis, it's going to be much more challenging for them to get all the way downstairs into the basement to use that litter box. And like I said before, maybe it's not clean enough. Of course, too, some cats, it might be too clean and they just want a little bit of scent. So quite often, choose a routine, whatever works for you, but changing the actual litter out of the pan once a month and changing the gross material out of the litter box every day. Stress, fear, and anxiety also can all impact a cat using the litter box or not using the litter box. So that's something to be looked at with your veterinarian as well. So really important to talk to your vet if your cat is not using the litter box. That's kind of our #1 go-to. So #1, go have a conversation with the vet. There's lots of medical reasons that would prevent a cat from using the litter box. If a cat has been constipated or if they've had a bladder infection, they might have been painful at one point using the litter box, and they'll tend to get litter box aversion. So they associate the litter box with pain because of their experience. So anything like that we want to definitely get a hold on from, with the veterinarian, see if they need pain medication, see if they need a new diet, whatever it might be. And so that's the #1. And then if the vet rules that there's nothing wrong medically, then we start looking at things like environmental enrichment, reducing stress. Sometimes if there's more than 1 cat in the house, the cats can have this weird stress that they're not interacting very well with each other. So things like Feliway, which is a feline pheromone diffuser, can be hugely beneficial in a lot of these situations to reduce stress. So best solution for inappropriate elimination is prevention. So ideally uncovered litter box, unscented litter, and it should be clay, scoopable litter, low traffic area, nice and quiet. Scoop at least once daily, and don't use any major cleaning chemicals when you're cleaning the box. One box per cat plus one, as I mentioned before. Try different litters. So most cats like the clay unscented litter. Some cats are different. Some cats actually like yesterday's snooze. Every cat's different and you have to treat them that way. So you kind of go through the list. And then this website's really great. So this is the Indoor Pet Initiative. And essentially there's a lot of reading material for owners and for us and for clients and family members who have cats that don't have anything medically wrong with them, but cats who might need environmental enrichment, sort of keep them stimulated throughout the day in their indoor environment, because a lot of times environmental enrichment can do wonders in getting a cat to use their litter box again. It's like when you exercise the heck out of your hyper dog, then they start behaving better because they've been stimulated, because you're meeting their needs all of a sudden. So when a cat does urinate or defecate on an area, you definitely want to clean it properly. So rather than using your Lysol or your Pine Sol, whatever you typically use an enzymatic cleaner. And urine erase, it's quite a process to use. I think it takes a couple hours. It is amazing, and you won't smell any cat urine if you use that product on the right. Identify the stressors and prevent access to favorite spots. So essentially too, you want to be protecting the cat's areas of tranquility. So if you know that your cat loves her little bed, maybe move that cat's bed somewhere nice and quiet so that they can have their own space and relax and not feel that, your 1-year-old child is going to go tear them out of their bed. Oftentimes too, we put our cats on lockdown, so if they're urinating out of the box, then we might confine them to a very small area, like a bathroom, with the litter box for the weekend, and hopefully sort of retrain them, so reminding them where they need to go. Only interfere if you catch the cat in the act. So what this is referring to, there is sort of common myth with dogs and cats that if you show them their urine or if you show them their feces after they've marked or they've defecated outside the box, and tell them bad cat, or people used to actually rub their noses in it. They used to think that that worked really well to prevent them from doing it again. It doesn't. They don't have that ability necessarily to connect past events with current problems. So to show them their urine and like rub their nose in it, they're kind of just like, yeah, I did that. That was me. Yep, that's mine. Smells like mine. So it doesn't really get the point across that we were trying to get across, and it's not very nice. No animal, I'm sure, wants to have their face put in their urine or rubbed in their urine or shown their urine. Just clean it up and start again, and start with some of these retraining methods. Do praise them when they use the correct location. Good cat. So spraying is interesting. Spraying, is it different from inappropriate urination? So again, if it's a male intact cat, i.e. he has his testicles, which this guy does, then the number one reason that they're doing that is to mark territory. So it's innate, it's in their bodies, it's in their brains. They're going to do it regardless if they're intact. It can become a behavioral issue, more so, even after they've been neutered, and that's still territorial, but there's more of a chance of retraining them to use the litter box for marking than if they had their testicles. So number one, clients complaining about a cat spraying in their house. It's a male cat. He's not neutered. Number one recommendation is neuter your cat. Number one. So essentially, spraying is when a cat propels urine at a high velocity from their penis onto a vertical surface. And it has tons and tons of pheromones. They're often seeking a mate, and they're marking territory. Happens a lot when there's conflict with another cat. So sometimes if you have a cat inside, you might find that male cats come around your house and mark outside your house, and you can smell male cat urine. They spray on a vertical surface because that is essentially they're spraying at nose height. So when a cat walks by, their nose is right there and they're able to smell. So spraying continued, just carrying on. So again, unneutered cat, definitely neuter that cat for sure. Otherwise, if it's not a neutered cat, it could just be behavioral, and it might mean that there's some tension in the household, that there's some disruption to them. So definitely consult a vet, right? Always rule out the medical aspect of it. Spay and neuter, because female cats can do it too, especially if they're intact. Identify and eliminate the stressors. And then this Feel Away, it's a fabulous product. There's Feel Away diffusers. You plug them into your wall, and it just releases, essentially it's a synthetic cat hormone, pheromone, that just makes the cats calm. So it comes in a spray and it comes in a diffuser that you plug into the wall. Really, really, really important for cats when you're introducing new cats to the household, and also if there's any tension between cats. Also, if it is determined to be a behavioral issue where the cat is stressed, or there might be some anxiousness in that cat, then there are anti-anxiety medications that work really well too. So homework, just a reminder, you've got a test next week on domestication and feline studies, multiple choice, true and false, and of course, as always, email me if you have any questions.